What is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to Unit 6.5a. We're going to do a little A, B, C, D on this. This is part of industrialization, imperialism. This is called reform and reaction. And basically, the overall arching idea here, and we're going to go through 4 different places. We're going to do China, Russia, Ottoman Empire, and Japan. And with all 4 of them, what we're going to essentially look at is the Europeans who are industrialized and the United States are going out and taking over places, whether it's through force or through economic means. And these other countries are realizing that they're really behind. These are like the world, these countries have been powerhouses in the past. And they realize that they're now like losing ground to the West, and they want to try and reform their country to industrialize. So the whole theme here that you're going to see over the next 4 videos is how do we reform our country to industrialize? What steps do we take? And then what's the reaction to those steps? We're going to kind of go bam, bam, bam. This is going to be shorter videos. I'm going to break this up into a couple because that was the request, and that's just what I do. This is 1750 to 1900, same time period as the Age of Revolutions and the Enlightenment and all that good stuff. Let's do a little rock and roll in China. So first of all, a little China contextualization. I know you know this, like I'm insulting your intelligence by even reminding you of this, but just in case you might have forgotten in the gunpowder empires, we talked about China from 1450 to 1750. In 1644, date's really not important, but the Manchus invade and officially overthrow the Ming Dynasty. And the Ming Dynasty had been around since the 1300s. And this Manchu group comes in and overthrows the Ming and sets up a new dynasty called the Qing. They keep a lot of Chinese ways. They keep the mandate of heaven, civil service exams, a lot of the traditional Chinese culture they keep in place. And they do this because they are foreigners invading China, and they want to keep the Chinese people happy. They don't want to have them rebel, so they keep a lot of the old ways and a lot of what had been in place for a long time. However, they do kind of limit this integration. The Manchus are really scared that they're going to themselves are going to turn Chinese in a sense. So they are going to keep some separation. They keep the traditional Manchu hairstyle. They force people to wear queues, which, if you remember, is this long ponytail. They also are going to ban intermarriage between Manchus and Chinese people to avoid children that could end up being half Manchu but really raised as Chinese. And also, there is going to be European trade here. The Europeans, remember, they're exploring and trading from 1450 to 1750. They're allowed in certain areas of China, but they're limited in where they can go. So that's kind of our framework. That's our contextualization. There's a couple problems in China by the 1800s or so, or mid-1800s. One, they are not industrialized, and not being industrialized is a problem because other countries in the West are industrialized. Second, China has this import. There's a lot of import of opium coming into their country. Opium is a drug that you smoke. It was very popular in the 1800s. It is of the similar drug family as heroin, so it doesn't provide the same intensity and possible overdose that you would see necessarily with heroin, but it is a highly addictive drug, and it doesn't cause people to be productive. It causes them basically just to like pass out and chill. And British merchants are bringing this in from South Asia. Remember British Raj? They're bringing it from South Asia into China, and the Chinese people have a liking for opium. So these British merchants are bringing it to China. Meanwhile, just an FYI, the British government bans opium. They don't allow opium in their own country, just an FYI. But they are allowing their merchants to trade it into China from India. The Chinese government realizes that their citizens are much less productive. And you can just see, this is not the greatest chart, but this is how fast the opium importation is going to rise between the 1800 and 1880. So we have this huge increase, and China realizes that their citizens are not doing what they want them to do, and especially wealthy people are using opium, which are civil servants, workers, so they ban it. And Britain, who is kind of the drug dealer in this story, says, oh, heck no, you don't ban opium. You can't do this. This is our #1 import into China. We've been looking for imports into China for the past couple hundred years, and finally we have something that people like. You can't ban this. We're going to declare war on you. So Britain declares war on China because China bans opium, in a war that's called the Opium Wars. Almost like calling something like the Marijuana Wars or the Cocaine Wars. Like, it's literally a war over drugs. China gets pummeled by the British. The British are industrialized. They have modern weaponry. The Chinese don't. As a result of this, the Chinese are forced to sign something called the Treaty of Nanjing. Nanjing is a city in China. And what the Treaty of Nanjing says is you must open up China to all Europeans. There's no longer, you can't limit where we go. Number 2, Hong Kong, which is down here. Hong Kong will be a possession of Great Britain until January 1st, 1997. And this treaty signed in the 1850s. So they say for the next 140 years, we will have possession of this. And lastly, extraterritoriality, meaning that any European who commits a crime in China, rather than be put on trial in China, they will be able to go back to their home country. This is extraterritoriality is like a slap in the face to people. Everyone wants to be tried. People should be tried where they commit the crime, but if they go back to their home country, you can imagine the justice and the sentence will be much lighter than if they were convicted in the country where they committed the crime. So people in China don't like these, don't like this treaty, and the government of China, the Qing, is allowed to stay in power. They're not conquered. We have imperialism going on, but they're not conquered, but this forcing is similar to imperialism. And China decides to reform their government. They attempt to industrialize. Over the course of 35 years, from 1861 to 1865, they have a program called the Self-Strengthening Movement. So we're going to strengthen ourselves, and that's the movement, in order to industrialize. And the goal is to modernize their military through funding by the Qing government. So the Qing is going to promote and pump in money into this industrialization attempt, and they are going to attempt to modernize themselves. So the way they're going to modernize is they're going to modernize their military, try and maybe create some factories, and their motto is Chinese learning, and this is their motto, Chinese learning at its base, Western learning for use. So we're still going to be Chinese in our nature, but we're going to incorporate Western ideas to use to help us industrialize. So we're going to try and keep the Chinese culture, but bring in the Western technology and mush it all together, but not lose our Chinese ways. There's a big issue, and this is not really going to be successful. They really need natural resources. They don't have the resources that they need, and they don't have the railroads and the infrastructure, big fancy word like roads and railroads, to really transport these goods. So it's going to be unsuccessful. They try and industrialize over 30 years. They really fail. We have Westerners pouring into the country because our borders are pretty much open with Europe now. People are still smoking opium. So we try and reform, and it's not good. And in the 1890s, there's a reaction to this. So in the late 1890s through 1901, basically, there's something called the Boxer Rebellion. And boxers in China at this time are not like boom, boom, boom boxers. We're talking, it's a type of martial art in China at the time. And these people were considered to have like mystical, magical powers where they could like disappear and like float in the air. And they rise up as a group to rise up against this Western influence in China. So it's really an anti-colonial, couple fancy words here, nationalist movement where they're basically going to say, we don't want these people here, and we're questioning whether or not the Qing should even be in charge for allowing all these Westerners to come in. They rise up, they start like guerrilla warfare in the streets, like trying to kill people. But the Europeans, again, here's the theme, they have better weapons, and the boxers can't stop bullets with their hands through martial arts or through a sword. So it's put down pretty quickly. And this is going to be a major, major problem, and it shows the weakness of China. It shows that their government, the Qing Dynasty, is losing influence, and what we're going to see in the next period is this government's going to be overthrown, and a new government's going to take over. So, theme here, problems, industrialize, industrialization fails, rebellion happens, rebellion fails, China's in bad shape, which is a quick turn from where we've been in this entire course, where China was up here, now they're kind of on the decline. So, that's what I got. You got any questions, you write it down, you let me know. I'm out.